House choice. Hello and happy 2019. I am Carly. I used to make lots of videos, now not so much, but it's part of my resolutions this year to make more videos and to talk more about books because that's what I like, so that's what I'm gonna do. So today I am going to tell you guys about, I think there's 10 on the list, but I'm going to tell you guys about books that I read in 2018 that I really loved and that I want to recommend to you. So let me grab my notes and the first book and we'll just get started. The first two books are by the same author, Emily Barr. This one is The One Memory of Flora Banks, and the other one that I'm going to talk about later is called The Truth and Lies of Ella Black. The One Memory of Flora Banks is the story about a girl who has short-term memory loss, and so she often leaves herself notes to remind her where she is, who she's with, so that she feels safe when she forgets. One night, Ella goes to a party and kisses a boy, and the next morning she remembers. And so the book follows her story trying to find the boy and figure out how she was able to remember this one thing, but not any other short-term things. It actually leads her to the Arctic, where the sun is up all the time, and she's looking for this boy and trying to find answers. The reason I brought up the sun being up all the time was that drastically messes with Flora's concept of time. Flora often doesn't remember what time of day it is or what she should be doing. Sometimes throughout the book it just stops and it starts and she's in her room and she doesn't remember why. And then she looks at a post-it note and it says it's time for bed. So the whole story is told very fragmented, and that causes the reader to also feel fragmented in the same way that Flora does. She kind of gets lost in her own head. It's a lot of starting and stopping and starting over, and she has a book that she carries with her that is the story of how she had her memory loss. And throughout the book there's secrets that unfold and lies and things that she didn't know that now she has to try and remember. But it's all about her taking back her own life and writing her own story. And it was so touching and really just so beautiful to read. It did give me a lot it did give me a lot of anxiety because Flora, of course, being in a new place and not knowing who she is or where she is or why she's there, has a lot of anxiety herself. And so I kind of took on that anxiety for Flora. Yeah. But it was so good. Emily Barr is a fantastic writer who knows how to tell a story and set a scene fantastically. Fantastically? Yeah. And so the next book by Emily Barr is The Truth and Lies of Ella Black. And it's about a regular girl, seemingly regular girl, who has a secret, dark, second identity. I personally read it as her having dissociative identity disorder, which there's a really great channel that talks about it. I think it's called Alex and Max, but I'll link it down below. And you can learn all about it. I don't feel confident enough to tell you about it, but she basically has a second personality, an alter that she calls Bella, because she's Ella but bad, so Bella. She works really hard to keep this secret, Ella does. She doesn't want anyone to see the bad parts of her. So she names the bad parts of her and she only lets them out in private, but her world is very quickly turned upside down when her parents take her on her surprise trip to Rio, a place she's always wanted to be, but they're acting very strange and they seem to be hiding things from her, and she's finding it harder and harder to keep Bella at bay in this stressful situation. So it's all about her battling her inner self and learning how to live with the two sides of herself, as well as unraveling a story about her family and secrets that have been kept from her. So obviously Emily Barr does a fantastic way of writing scenes and settings. I think she was a travel writer for a very long time, so that definitely comes in handy. And she's also very good at writing mysteries. So throughout the book, both Flora Banks and Ella are learning things about themselves that they never knew, secrets that their parents kept from them. And she's so good at unfolding those piece by piece so that you feel like you're learning along with the character. Bella is not a narrator in Ella Black, but she does sometimes interrupt Ella, and she's always screaming at Ella. She's always loud and yelling. And so you can tell when Bella is talking or when Bella is taking over, because Bella's narrative voice becomes very strained when Bella is taking over, and especially when Bella wants to do something destructive. Ella's narration becomes very hard to follow. As you would assume, it becomes harder for her to concentrate. And that was really amazing to read, and it definitely opened my eyes to a whole new world that I didn't even know. I did not know about this disorder. It's not explicitly stated that she has DID. That's just how I read it. But I didn't know about it before, and then it kind of led me down like a little rabbit hole. But Emily Barr's fantastic storytelling and just can set a scene like nobody else, so definitely read those. Next ones I'm going to put together because they're a duology. It is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, I think is how you say, maybe Leah. This is a dystopian sort of fantasy about 6 people who come together to plan a bank heist, or it's not really a bank. They plan a heist that is supposedly going to make them rich beyond all belief. These 6 people come from different backgrounds, and they're all kind of thrown together by coincidence or life circumstance, but they create like their own little family. So it follows the narrative in the different points of view. So at the beginning of each chapter, it'll tell you who is narrating. I found it a little hard to follow at first, about the first 10 or 15 chapters, when you're still getting used to characters' names and the names of places. This is one of those books that has a map at the beginning of the book, so you know that it's going to be a lot of travel and things like that. A lot of these places and names reminded me of Scandinavian names and things like that. There is a place that they go that, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I said Fjerda, that I assumed was like an off fantasy version of Norway and the fjords. But so that was really nice because I visited Norway a couple of years back and I loved it there. So having to feel like a little bit connected to the Scandinavian culture was really cool. Okay, so throughout the series, the reader kind of becomes a part of this gang. You are in on all of the plans that they do, you're in on all of the heists, you're in on everything that goes wrong and their reactions to it. So it was very like encompassing. This book is part of a larger universe called the Grishaverse. That is on my reading list, but I haven't read yet. But these 2 books were so good. There's great representation of people of color, especially women of color, LGBTQ representation, and I just thought it was really well done. My favorite characters are Jesper, who is a sharpshooter, and I think that's amazing, and Kaz, who is like dark and broody, which I always fall for. But really good books. I actually recommended them to my mom and her book club, so right now they're reading Six of Crows, and I really want to hear what they think about it. Yeah, fantastic. Next book I'm going to talk about is Salt and Storm by Kendall Culper. This book I found at the dollar store. This cost me $1, and it's on my top 10 for 2018, so amazing. Always check your dollar store books. So the main character, Avery, comes from a long line of witches who are centered at the middle of like a small East Coast town in the United States. Like think like tiny island in Maine, like a really small town that is a fishing town. And so her lineage has served as the town witch. Avery herself was raised by her grandmother, and so the grandmother is the witch, that's what they call her, and was raised watching her grandmother perform spells and do charms and help the people of this town. But she's also watched her grandmother grow very old. Usually the witches don't grow very old. The witches in her family tend to die really young. Avery's mother was supposed to take over as the witch and basically ran away and refused her lineage to get married. So when she gets married, she comes back and takes Avery away from her grandmother and forbids Avery from seeing her grandmother or practicing witchcraft. So Avery has to practice it in secret. Avery's talent is that she can translate dreams. So people come to her, they pay her a little bit of money, and they tell her dreams, and she knows exactly what those dreams mean, what the future is coming. You know, maybe it's you're gonna get a new job, or your ship is going to wreck, or something like that. but she also translates her own dreams. Then the story unfolds. She is going through trying to find a loophole to get her out of this, even though she knows that she is never wrong about dreams. And along the way, she meets a boy who is from similar lineage, who is from a long line of people who also practice witchcraft. And he tries to help her avoid this murder. This story was so compelling from page one. I wanted to read more. I am really into novels about witches, but just the storytelling in general, the scene setting, the way she describes this small town made me feel almost like it was from like my small town that I studied abroad in, and it was the first book that I got when I returned to the States, so it was definitely like very comforting to me. She also does a really great way of explaining witchcraft and the spells and the charms and basically how the witches are perceived in a way that is very clear, and you could hand this book to someone who maybe doesn't read fantasy or who doesn't know anything about witch history, like some weirdos like me that read historical books about it. But you could hand this to someone who maybe doesn't read fantasy, and they'd be able to follow along really well and understand all of the things that the witches are doing. It's not very heavy in terminology or in things that people who aren't into witchcraft would understand. So she's very clear, but she's also very great at building scenery and world building, and it was really great.